Deep in the Kubinka Tank Museum outside Moscow, hidden for decades behind a Tiger I, sits one of World War II's strangest mysteries. A vehicle so bizarre, so utterly incomprehensible, that even today, 80 years after its creation, nobody knows what it really was. Item number 37. That's all the Russians will tell you. No name, no documents, no explanation. But the world knows it by another name. The Kugelpanzer, Germany's ball tank. A one-man armored sphere that looks like something from science fiction, yet somehow, impossibly, it existed. This is not the story of a tank that won battles. This is the story of a machine that defies explanation. A metal enigma shipped halfway around the world, captured in the chaos of war's end, and locked away in Soviet secrecy for generations. What was it for? Who designed it? Did it ever see combat? And why would anyone build a tank shaped like a ball? August 1945. The Soviet Red Army swept through Manchuria in one of the most devastating military operations of World War II. In just 11 days, they crushed the Japanese Kwantung Army, over 1 million men, and seized control of territories the Japanese had occupied for years. Among the chaos, the spoils of war, and the thousands of captured vehicles and weapons, Soviet soldiers found something unusual. It was small, barely 5 feet tall, round, like a barrel lying on its side, covered in just 5 millimeters of steel, stripped of whatever engine once powered it, with no markings, no documentation, nothing to explain what it was or where it came from. The vehicle was shipped back to the Soviet Union, to the Kubinka Proving Grounds, a top-secret facility where captured enemy equipment was tested, studied, and cataloged. And there it sat, for decades, hidden, forgotten, listed only as Item 37 in the museum's collection. The Kubinka Tank Museum is famous for housing some of the rarest military vehicles on Earth. The only surviving Panzer VIII Maus, Hitler's monstrous 188-ton super-heavy tank, experimental Soviet prototypes, captured American and British vehicles from the Cold War. But nothing in the entire collection is as mysterious as Item 37. For years it sat behind that Tiger I, deliberately obscured from view. Its original olive green paint was covered over with glossy gray, the same paint used on other vehicles to hide their true origins. The engine had been removed, the interior was inaccessible, and the Russians forbade anyone from taking metallurgical samples. Why the secrecy? What could possibly be so sensitive about this tiny, seemingly useless vehicle that the Soviets felt compelled to hide it? The answer, frustratingly, is that we still don't know. But the mystery only deepens when we start asking questions about where it came from. The most widely accepted theory is this: the Kugelpanzer was built in Germany, possibly by the Krupp Company, sometime in the late 1930s or early 1940s. It was then shipped to Japan as part of Nazi Germany's technology-sharing program with the Empire of Japan, a partnership that saw German submarines carrying jet fighters, rocket technology, and other advanced weapons to their Axis ally on the other side of the world. The Japanese took it to Manchuria, where they tested it for something. And when the Soviets overran Japanese positions in August 1945, they captured it. But there's another theory. Some sources claim the Kugelpanzer was never in Manchuria at all. They say it was captured at the Kummersdorf Proving Grounds in Germany, the same place where the Soviets found the Maus super-heavy tank. If that's true, then why did the Soviets say it came from Manchuria? Was it disinformation? A cover story? Or just confusion in the chaos of war's end? We don't know. And that's the problem with the Kugelpanzer. Almost nothing about it can be verified. Every fact dissolves into speculation. Every answer leads to more questions. What we do know is this: the vehicle is approximately 1.5 meters tall, about 5 feet. It weighs 1.8 tons. It's covered in 5 millimeters of steel armor, barely enough to stop small arms fire. It has 2 massive circular wheels, 1.5 meters in diameter, that form the main body. At the rear, there's a smaller stabilizing wheel for steering and balance. Inside, there was room for exactly one person, sitting on what was reportedly a motorcycle-style saddle. The driver could peer out through a narrow horizontal viewing slit, barely wider than a letterbox. Below that slit, there may have been an opening for firing a single machine gun, though this is disputed. The engine was a single-cylinder, two-stroke motor producing just 25 horsepower. Maximum speed? About 5 miles per hour, a brisk jogging pace. Terrifying, isn't it? To understand how anyone could have designed something this strange, we need to go back. Back to World War I, when the very concept of the tank was being invented, and when equally bizarre ideas were being tested. The Western Front of World War I was hell on earth. Millions of men trapped in trenches, separated by a devastated no-man's land of shell craters, barbed wire, and machine gun fire. Traditional cavalry and infantry charges were suicide. The battlefield needed a new solution. In September 1916, the British deployed the first tanks, lumbering, rhomboid-shaped monsters that could cross trenches and crush barbed wire. They were revolutionary, terrifying, and they changed warfare forever. The Germans, stunned by this new weapon, scrambled to respond. In late 1916 and early 1917, the German War Ministry ordered multiple companies to design and build their own armored vehicles. Most of these designs were conventional, or at least as conventional as early tanks could be. But one company had a different idea. The Treffuswagen. Built by Hansa Lloyd of Bremen, completed on February 1, 1917. It was insane. 2 enormous wheels, 11 feet in diameter, sandwiching a narrow armored body with guns on the front and sides. A rear caster wheel for steering. The whole thing weighed 19 tons. The theory was sound, or at least it seemed sound on paper. Large wheels would have low ground pressure, making it easier to cross soft, muddy terrain. They could roll over obstacles and trenches. They wouldn't get bogged down like tracked vehicles. The reality was very different. When the Treffuswagen was tested in February and March 1917, it proved to be a disaster. The gun's recoil was so powerful that after just a few shots, the gunner couldn't continue due to severe head and shoulder pain. The vehicle was slow, unstable, and mechanically unreliable. The enormous wheels, rather than being an advantage, made the whole machine top-heavy and difficult to control. On May 14, 1917, the German military held a demonstration of various tank prototypes, including the Treffuswagen. The verdict was swift and brutal. Unfit for combat use. The design was rejected. In October 1917, the prototype was dismantled and scrapped. The better alternative, the Sturmpanzerwagen A7V, went into production instead. Germany would build only 20 of them, but at least they worked. But here's the thing, the idea of the big-wheel tank didn't die with the Treffuswagen. Germany wasn't alone in considering such designs. In France, there was the bouclier roulant, the rolling shield, a one-man armored vehicle for crossing no man's land. In the United States, a Texan inventor named A.J. Richardson designed the tumbleweed tank in 1936, a spherical armored vehicle large enough for 3 people and 3 machine guns. None of these designs ever made it past the drawing board. Except one, the Kugelpanzer. Somehow, somewhere, in the 1930s or early 1940s, German engineers looked at the failed Treffuswagen design and thought, what if we made it smaller? Simpler? What if instead of a massive battle tank, we built a one-man vehicle? The concept makes a certain kind of sense for World War I. A light, mobile platform that could traverse cratered battlefields. A protected shell for infantry support. A vehicle that could move with troops across no man's land while providing covering fire. But by the time the Kugelpanzer was actually built, the world had moved on. World War II wasn't fought in trenches. It was blitzkrieg, fast, mobile, mechanized warfare. Tanks charged across open terrain at 30 miles per hour. Armored divisions coordinated with aircraft and artillery. What good was a 5-mile-per-hour ball with a single machine gun going to do against that? So what was it for? Historians have debated this question for decades. The truth is, without documentation, without any records at all, we're left with nothing but educated guesses. Theory number 1, reconnaissance vehicle. This is what the plaque at Kugelpanzer claims. The Kugelpanzer was designed as a one-man reconnaissance vehicle, a mobile observation post that could venture into dangerous territory, spot enemy positions, and report back. There's just one tiny problem with this theory. It makes absolutely no sense. Think about it. Reconnaissance requires visibility. The Kugelpanzer's viewing slit was barely wide enough to see through. The driver would have tunnel vision, unable to observe anything except what was directly in front. There was no apparent radio equipment, so how would the driver communicate what he saw? And then there's the speed. 5 miles per hour. Any enemy soldier could literally walk up to it. Any vehicle could outrun it. If you wanted to build a reconnaissance vehicle, you'd make it fast and stealthy. The Kugelpanzer was neither. Theory number 2, artillery spotter. Similar to reconnaissance but with a specific purpose, the driver would observe enemy positions and direct friendly artillery fire. This would explain the heavily armored shell. The vehicle would need to survive in exposed positions under enemy fire. But again, the problems are obvious. No radio, no way to communicate coordinates, limited visibility, and that 5mm armor? An anti-tank rifle would punch straight through it. A single artillery shell landing nearby would turn the whole thing into shrapnel. Theory number 3, cable layer. This theory suggests the Kugelpanzer was designed to lay communication cables across the battlefield. The armored shell would protect the operator while running cable under fire. It's not the worst theory. Cable laying was vital for communications before widespread radio use. And the slow speed wouldn't matter as much. You're not trying to outrun anyone. Just survive long enough to complete the task. But there's no evidence of any cable-laying equipment on the vehicle. No spools, no mounting points, nothing. Theory number 4, infantry support weapon. This is perhaps the most plausible theory. The Kugelpanzer was designed as a light infantry support vehicle, essentially a mobile pillbox that could move with advancing troops, provide covering fire from its single machine gun, and serve as an armored refuge when stationary. The design makes more sense in this context. The low speed doesn't matter if you're moving at infantry pace. The armor, while thin, would protect against small arms fire. The large wheels would help traverse rough terrain. The problem? By World War II, this entire concept was obsolete. Infantry support vehicles existed. They were called tanks or armored cars, and they were far more effective than a one-man ball with a pop gun. Theory number 5, suicide weapon. Some have speculated that the Kugelpanzer was designed as a suicide vehicle, loaded with explosives and rolled into enemy positions or tanks, with the driver bailing out at the last moment, or not. The Japanese certainly deployed suicide weapons: Kaiten manned torpedoes, Oka rocket bombs, Shinyo explosive motorboats. Could the Germans have built something similar? It's unlikely. The Kugelpanzer was designed in Germany, not Japan. And while Nazi Germany did experiment with some near-suicidal weapons, particularly their human torpedoes, which had an 80% fatality rate, Albert Speer, the armaments minister, convinced Hitler to reject true suicide weapon programs. The argument? Suicide attacks weren't part of Germanic warrior culture. Besides, if you wanted to build a ramming weapon, you'd make it faster, heavier, and more robust. The Kugelpanzer was none of these things. Theory number 6, demining vehicle. This theory suggests the Kugelpanzer was meant to trigger landmines ahead of advancing troops. The armored shell and high ground clearance from the large wheels would protect the driver from mine blasts underneath. It's not impossible. Demining was a serious problem, and the design, with the driver elevated above the ground, might survive blast pressure better than conventional vehicles. But again, No documentation supports this. And it seems like an awfully complicated way to clear mines when you could just use a tank or an actual mine-clearing vehicle. The truth is, we may never know. Without documents, without testimony from the designers or operators, all we have are theories. And the Kugelpanzer keeps its secrets. But let's assume for a moment that the Manchuria capture story is true. That raises another question. Why did the Germans send it to Japan? During World War II, Germany and Japan shared military technology despite being on opposite sides of the world. German submarines made the dangerous journey to Japan, carrying advanced weapons, jet engine designs, rocket technology, and prototype vehicles. Some of these transfers made sense. Jet fighters, rocket-powered interceptors, advanced radar. But the Kugelpanzer? A slow, lightly armored, experimental vehicle of questionable utility. Why bother? One theory is that by the time the Kugelpanzer was shipped to Japan, likely sometime in the early 1940s, the Germans had already realized it was useless for modern warfare. Rather than scrap it, they sent it to their Japanese allies. Here, maybe you can figure out what to do with this thing. The Japanese Kwantung Army in Manchuria was known for testing unusual weapons and tactics. They had access to vast proving grounds and were willing to experiment with unconventional designs. Perhaps they saw potential in the Kugelpanzer that the Germans had missed. Or perhaps not. There's no record of it ever being used in combat. No Japanese military documents mention it. No battle reports, no photographs, nothing. Did they test it and decide it was worthless? Did they strip it down to study its construction? Or did it just sit in a warehouse somewhere, forgotten, until the Soviets overran the base in August 1945? We don't know. What we do know is this. When the Red Army swept through Manchuria in August 1945, they captured everything. Thousands of vehicles, weapons, documents, supplies. And somewhere in that chaos, they found the Kugelpanzer. Soviet engineers studied captured equipment extensively. German and Japanese technology was analyzed, tested, reverse engineered. Some captured vehicles were incorporated into Soviet designs. Others were put on display as trophies. The Kugelpanzer fell into a different category. Curiosity. Strange enough to preserve, but too weird to understand. So they shipped it back to Kubinka, cataloged it as Item 37, and locked it away. For decades, the Kugelpanzer remained hidden, deliberately obscured behind the Tiger I, painted over in gray to mask its origins, its internal components removed, the engine, the controls, anything that might reveal how it actually functioned. And the Russians wouldn't talk about it. Western historians knew it existed. Occasional visitors to Kubinka caught glimpses of it, but access was restricted, photography was limited, and any questions about its origins were met with silence or vague answers. Why the secrecy? What could possibly be classified about a failed prototype from a war that ended in 1945? The answer, ironically, may be embarrassment. The Soviets had built up Kubinka as a showcase of their military superiority. They displayed captured German superweapons, the Maus, the Sturmtiger, experimental prototypes. These were meant to demonstrate that Soviet forces had defeated the most advanced military technology in the world. But the Kugelpanzer? It wasn't fearsome. It wasn't advanced. It was ridiculous. A bizarre failure that made no sense. So they hid it. In 2017, things changed. The Kugelpanzer was moved to a new exhibit. It was repainted in darker German gray. Balkenkreuz markings, German crosses, were added to the hubs of each wheel. And for the first time, visitors could get a clear view of it. Suddenly, the world could see Item 37 clearly, and the internet exploded with speculation. Tank enthusiasts, historians, engineers, everyone had theories. Videos appeared on YouTube. Articles were written. Forum discussions raged about what it could have been used for. But the Russians still wouldn't allow metallurgical samples to be taken. The internal components remained missing. No documents were released from military archives. The mystery remained. Some researchers believe documents about the Kugelpanzer exist somewhere in Moscow's military archives, buried under decades of Cold War secrecy, classified for reasons nobody remembers, waiting to be discovered by some persistent historian who knows where to look. Others think the documents were destroyed, either deliberately during the war or accidentally in the chaos of 1945, or lost in the decades since. We may never know the truth. But here's what makes the Kugelpanzer genuinely fascinating. It exists. This isn't a paper design. It's not a drawing board concept. Someone actually built this thing. They welded the steel, installed the engine, tested it, shipped it halfway around the world. At some point, someone sat inside that claustrophobic metal sphere, peered through that narrow slit, and tried to make it work. What was that experience like? Hot? Deafening from the engine noise? Disorienting with such limited vision? We'll never know. The man who drove it, whoever he was, took that knowledge to his grave. The Kugelpanzer represents something important in military history, even if it was a failure. It represents the willingness to experiment, to try ideas that seem insane, to build something just to see if it works. World War II was full of bizarre weapons. The Germans built the Maus, a 188-ton tank so heavy it couldn't cross bridges. They designed the Landkreuzer P-1000 Rada, a 1,000-ton land battleship that was never built. They experimented with rocket fighters, jet bombers, acoustic cannons, and sun guns. The Allies had their own oddities. Britain's Project Habakkuk, an aircraft carrier made of ice. America's bat bombs and pigeon-guided missiles. The Soviets' teletanks and flying tanks. Most of these weapons never worked. Many were abandoned at the prototype stage. Some were outright failures. But occasionally, an insane idea worked. Jets, rockets, guided missiles, radar, nuclear weapons. These technologies seemed impossible until someone built them. The Kugelpanzer wasn't one of those successes, but it stands as a testament to human creativity. Misguided creativity, perhaps, but creativity nonetheless. Today, the Kugelpanzer sits in Kubinka, silent and enigmatic. Tourists photograph it. Tank enthusiasts study it. Historians debate it. And it reveals nothing. No documents have emerged from Russian archives. No German blueprints have been discovered. No Japanese military records mention it. The mystery remains as complete today as it was 80 years ago. Will we ever know the truth? Perhaps. Archives are slowly being opened. Classified documents are being declassified. Maybe somewhere, in a forgotten file cabinet in Moscow or Berlin, the answer sits waiting. Or maybe the Kugelpanzer will remain forever what it is now. The ultimate military mystery. A metal sphere that defies explanation. A vehicle that logic says shouldn't exist, yet does. And honestly, maybe that's perfect. In a world where almost everything can be explained, analyzed, and understood, it's somehow reassuring to know that some mysteries remain unsolved. The Kugelpanzer, Germany's ball tank. Item 37, the rolling enigma. A reminder that sometimes the strangest stories are true.